So next we have coming up to the mic is Lisa Levin. She'll be talking about Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative. Half the planet up for grabs, in parentheses on that one.
Okay, thank you. So today I'd like to talk about the deep half of the planet and tell you about the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative. This is one of multiple initiatives within the Center for Marine Biodiversity and Conservation, and I've chosen this because it's very representative of the goals of this center, which are to apply interdisciplinary science to solving the ocean's problems, and in particular those problems that result from global change. Our center, let me ask a quick question. Pointer? This one? All right, okay. So we take the approach that it takes research, it takes education and communication to address these problems, and it takes a whole host of disciplines. And here are some of the disciplines that are really required to address stewardship of the deep ocean and many other ocean problems. So I'm talking about the ocean below 200 meters. This covers something like 2/3 of the planet in terms of surface area, but in fact represents the majority of the habitable volume, that should say volume, of the planet. And yet we've seen less than 5%, oh no, I'm on automatic advance, less than 5% of the sea floor, and as a result, most of the species are undescribed. But we do know that there is a wealth of diversity out there in terms of habitats. We have hydrothermal vents and deep sea corals and sponge reefs, seamounts, canyons, and a vast deep pelagic, and a whole host of species associated with these. Well, why should we care about all of these species? They're very remote, far away. We do know that there are important ecological services and functions provided. From the deep sea, we have provisioning. We are now getting deep sea fishes and shellfish. We're drilling oil and gas from the deep sea, and we're starting to obtain pharmaceuticals and industrial agents from the deep ocean. But beyond those services with market value, we have important support functions. The deep sea provides habitat, food chain support, refuge, nursery grounds for our species. It also provides an array of regulating services. The deep ocean sequesters a huge amount of carbon. It's been valued at about $125 billion a year, that service, as well as nutrient cycling. And the biodiversity is starting to have value to us. We're starting to understand its value in terms of genetic resources, biomaterials, and very importantly, it is the raw material that allows the ocean and life in the ocean to adapt to change. The deep sea is also home to a vast array of scientific research. It's home to communication cables, and it is a source of inspiration for art, for movies, film, for literature, and many other creative activities as well. But the deep ocean, far from being pristine, is now being industrialized. Now, why is this? Well, since I was born, the human population has more than doubled. And a growing population means we demand more food, more energy, more raw materials. We're turning to the deep water for fishes as we deplete them in the coastal zone. So now we have damage, environmental damage from trawling. We have overfishing, we have ghost fishing, and we have loss of species and endangerment of species as bycatch without even being targeted. We are drilling deeper and deeper. There are 5,000 oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. The most recently deployed ones are shown in these big circles, and you can see they're almost all in deep water and thousands of meters of deep water. And the deep water horizon right here has shown us what can happen when there is an accident. We have a tremendous amount of waste disposal going on in the deep sea. It used to be radioactive waste and sewage. Much of that's been banned, but we're still depositing terrestrial mine tailings in the deep sea full of toxic substances, and there's a huge amount of trash, both intentional and much of it unintentional, that makes its way down into deep water. We also have advanced economies now, electronics, hybrid cars, alternative energy, and all of these are requiring more and more metals, nickel, copper, cobalt, zinc, and a host of rare earth elements like lanthanum and neodymium. are required by all of these. A Prius battery, for example, takes something like 10 pounds of lanthanum. And all of this, we are running out of these metals on land, and so we're looking to the deep sea, and we're now facing deep sea mining of manganese nodules in the abyssal regions, of cobalt crusts on seamounts, and of massive sulfides at hydrothermal vents. And basically, there's leasing going on. All of this is happening out of sight and out of mind. And here is my one climate slide. We, in addition to the human activities in the deep sea, we have changes due to climate. As CO2 enters the ocean, it is becoming more acidic, and we run the risk of losing our deep water calcifiers, including a vast array of coral reefs might turn into soft-bodied corals. As CO2 warms the atmosphere, the ocean warms, and becomes more stratified. We're losing oxygen in the interior of the ocean, and that's leading to habitat compression for many different kinds of animals, affecting their distribution. And then my little movie that didn't show up there shows what happens when warming dissociates gas hydrates, buried hydrocarbons, which might be a source of energy, but they're definitely a source of methane, and methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. So we now run the risk of releasing more methane into the ocean, into the atmosphere. Well, what do we do about this? Our challenge is to balance the use of resources, which we need, with the need to maintain the integrity of deep ocean ecosystems for future generations. And this is very complex because there are different jurisdictions for national and international waters. The different industry sectors are regulated separately, and there are huge governance gaps. The seafloor is governed for minerals, the water columns governed for fish, and basically there is no governance for genetic resources. So there's basically a grabbing of resources on a first-come, first-served basis. I'm down to less than a minute, so we need holistic environmental management, and the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative is designed to provide guidance to help employ ecosystem-based strategies, such as the precautionary approach in spatial planning. It's designed to engage stakeholders, and most importantly, we need expertise. We need to develop expertise from economics, from policy and law, biology, technology, and even human behavior to help manage the deep sea in a sustainable way. And I should mention that there's a lot of capacity building to do, because many of the resources that are being grabbed are in countries that don't have that kind of expertise, either biology, policy, law, economics, so on. So this initiative encompasses, has many different approaches. We team with other departments here. For example, there's going to be a course in deep sea economics. There's been a course in deep sea policy. We have courses in deep sea biology. We prepare briefs in an advisory capacity, run workshops and symposia, and are really working hard to communicate to the rest of the world the challenges faced in the deep sea. And I think I better stop there because I'm out of time. Thank you.
Just quickly, first question. What a powerful framework, the ecosystem framework. Obviously, you see we're shifting from peak oil to peak freshwater and things like this. So this last point that you made about communications, most of the work that's been done on ecosystem services has been terrestrial or at the land-sea interface. And the fact that you're focusing on the deep ocean, I think, brings added value to this. So how are you sort of injecting yourself into that planetary scale Millennium Ecosystem Assessment process that's going on to bring attention to this important work?
Well, one of the working groups within the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative is focused on world ocean assessments to make sure that the deep ocean is adequately represented, and in many cases it is not. So that's one approach. But it's a big challenge, and I think the goal is to make this an international effort and reach all the programs that are going on internationally in that regard.
Okay. Question? Yeah. Wait for the mic. See, there you go.
You mentioned ghost fishing. What that is?
Sure. I didn't have time. Ghost fishing is when fishing gear is lost into the ocean, and it's not attached to anything anymore, but it still continues to catch and kill fishes, basically.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Lisa, I'm curious, are you anywhere close to having a map of the biodiversity hotspots of the deep ocean in the way that we might have them for the terrestrial land surface?
No. I would tell you that we probably still have whole habitat types and ecosystems left to discover out there. The rate of discovery has been phenomenal, but it's remote, it's very expensive to access, so the rate of exploration is very slow.
Other questions? Yeah. Sir in the white shirt?
This may be more of a question for our organizers as much as our panel, and I came in a few minutes late, so I apologize if I missed it, but I'm curious. I've seen a lot of great science, and I'm learning a lot about my colleagues here at UCSD, but how are we supposed to integrate this when we think about the strategic plan? What is sort of the goal of listening to all these talks? Is it to reach out to our colleagues here? Is it to think about, have you guys thought about like the kind of resources you specifically want to enhance these efforts? It's a fascinating discussion, but it'd be helpful for me if we put a little bit more tangibility on what are we taking away from here to advance our strategic plan or to draft it more carefully or whatever we're trying to achieve.
Do you guys want to answer that?
Yeah.
Okay, Kit. Okay, Seth, you came in late. But it's really wonderful, wonderful set of questions. The notion today is to launch the conversation in these broad initiatives to try to hone it down to some areas of potential new collaborations, in addition to sharing and learning from one another, to really be looking for directions that UCSD can move in as a function of what you want as a faculty, and for us to begin to examine what are some of the resources that it will take to launch efforts in these areas, or to be able to bring the potential that UC San Diego has to fruition in the future. Now, of course, that's not something that can happen in 1 year from a financial perspective. That's why we're talking about this really as a launch of that discussion and helping to hone these broad initiatives into areas that are workable, tangible. We would like products to come out of here, ideas to come out, and priorities to emerge from this discussion. But not all of that will be decided today, but we want to start that conversation, both about areas to refine and also resources that are needed to help us move forward.
So
Thank you.
That's a great segue to the conclusion. Yeah,
Can I
sure,
just
of
add
course.
one thing? So I would say, in addition to this, we're looking for opportunities, things to build upon that maybe we haven't recognized before, new collaborations that could lead to new research projects, new educational programs. Because as far as I'm aware, we've never had a meeting involving our faculty that reaches out across the whole campus. And this is what we're trying to do moving forward, is do more of this.
I'm thinking we should probably migrate into the 15 minutes, but let's thank Lisa for her.
Thermal vents and deep sea corals and sponge reefs, seamounts, canyons, and a vast deep pelagic, and a whole host of species associated with these. Well, why should we care about all of these species? They're very remote, far away. We do know that there are important ecological services and functions provided. From the deep sea, we have provisioning. We are now getting deep. All right, okay. So we take the approach that it takes research, it takes education and communication to address these problems, and it takes a whole host of disciplines. And here are some of the disciplines that are really required to address stewardship of the deep ocean and many other ocean problems. So I'm talking about the ocean below 200 meters. This covers something like 2/3. This is one of multiple initiatives within the Center for Marine Biodiversity and Conservation, and I've chosen this because it's very representative of the goals of this center, which are to apply interdisciplinary science to solving the ocean's problems, and in particular, those problems that result from global change. Our center, let me ask a quick question. Pointer?
So next we have coming up to the mic is Lisa Levin. She'll be talking about Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative. Half the planet up for grabs, in parentheses on that one.
Okay, thank you. So today I'd like to talk about the deep half of the planet and tell you about the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative. Thirds of the planet, in terms of surface area, but in fact represents the majority of the habitable volume, that should say volume, of the planet. And yet we've seen less than 5%, oh no, I'm on automatic advance, less than 5% of the sea floor, and as a result, most of the species are undescribed. But we do know that there is a wealth of diversity out there in terms of habitats. We have